Hello and welcome everybody to today's episode of the JBLM podcast.
Our podcast is currently streaming on Podbean and YouTube. The JBLM podcast is your one-stop sports shop podcast for news around the sports world.
My name is Jack.
My name is Brendan.
We're very excited to bring you today's very special episode. Today we have our very first special guest on the podcast who we will introduce later.
But first, let's jump right into the hot topic. First up, the race for the Western Conference 8 seed is over. The Portland Trail Blazers beat the Memphis Grizzlies in the first and only playing game yesterday to secure the final spot in the Western Conference playoffs. Going into the bubble, the Grizzlies had the 8 seed, and they were the projected favorite to keep the 8 seed as least going into the play-in tournament. But many people had the Pelicans getting up to the 9th seed and possibly upsetting the Grizzlies. But Trailblazers, it shouldn't come as a surprise since they were actually the closest team to the Grizzlies going into the bubble. They were only a half game behind, so I see no reason why they should come as a surprise for anybody. I think they were I'd say they were my second team behind the Pelicans, and I would have had the Kings third but the Kings obviously and the Pelicans both did not perform to what anyone thought they would have. And the Suns, the surprise team, they went 8-0 in the bubble, but still ended up missing the play-in. So, Jack, what are your thoughts of Portland securing this last spot in the playoffs?
So, in episode 1 I said that the Pelicans were probably my favorite. I did deep down think that the Trailblazers did have a chance to be the 8th seed, but I really didn't bring that up. I trusted in Damian Lillard. He's always been one of my favorite players, and especially after seeing, when he missed those 2 free throws against the Clippers, I saw that like a fire was lit under him, so he was playing with this passion. He was playing to prove them wrong, and probably one of the most intense series of games I've seen Damian Lillard play in. But I did kind of want the Pelicans to do it because, everyone's a Zion fan, you really can't hate Zion. But, I'm happy seeing the Blazers in there. I think this is good for the Trailblazers. I think this is good for the NBA because it's going to give us a really entertaining matchup. But, obviously you have to be sad for the Suns. I think everyone's sad for the Suns. Devin Booker played his heart out and he played amazing. But, it wasn't really their time. So I think the Pelicans, the Grizzlies, and the Suns are going to bounce back and get even stronger. But, I think this is good.
So the Blazers and the Lakers will be playing each other in the first round of the playoffs. How do you think the series will go? What's your prediction?
On paper, on how good the teams are, the Lakers should win. But they have been struggling recently. I obviously don't think they've been trying their hardest because they had already clinched the first seed in the West. But, instead of this being a 4-0 sweep of the Lakers, I think the Blazers probably win 1 or 2 games. I just think it's going to be an interesting series.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because with the loss of Avery Bradley, a good defender at the guard position there, it kind of it hurts the Lakers in terms of guarding Dame and CJ McCollum, the 2 star players for the Blazers. But I'd also, on the other hand, no one really matches up well with LeBron in terms of guarding him. So I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll definitely be a lot of scoring in this series. My prediction is the Lakers will win 6 because honestly, I think Damian Lillard he's just so about winning right now. He's harnessing his internal Mamba mentality, I think that Damian Lillard will probably just will them to, almost cracking the Lakers into 7 games. I think the Lakers will end up winning in 6 there just because, the Lakers, they're so talented, with LeBron and AD, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Blazers put up the upset. I would be surprised if they got swept as well. So it could go either way for me, but personally I'll go Blazers in 6.
Yeah, I don't think the Blazers are going to win this series, but I think if Dame keeps playing the way he is, I think he could take it probably to 5 or 6 games, I'd say. I doubt it's going to a Game 7, but if it is, it's going to be a really interesting matchup. But on paper, the Lakers really should win this one.
Alright, so Russell Westbrook suffered a right quad strain and is expected to miss at least the beginning of the Rockets' first round playoff series against the Thunder. How do you think this affects the Rockets, and do you think they can still beat the Thunder without him?
This is a hard hit to the Rockets. This may come as a surprise and may be kind of weird, but Russell Westbrook is actually like my favorite player in the league right now. So it kind of hurts seeing from a fan standpoint, but, I think the Rockets, they have a lot of depth in their lineup. I don't think it's going to be, I thought it was going to be pretty easy for the Rockets to beat the Thunder, but now I think it's going to be a little more difficult. But, with Harden, I think the Rockets still do have a really big chance on beating the Thunder right here. And I personally think they will beat the Thunder, but I'm guessing probably like maybe 6 games. I don't think it's going to go to 7, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, so if the Rockets, basically the Rockets just need to not get off to a terrible start against the Thunder. They need to at least win 1 or 2 games before Russ comes back, and hopefully keep the Thunder at 1 or 2 games themselves. So I think when Russ does come back, say they end up winning that series, they'd end up going on to play, assuming that the favorite wins every series in the Western Conference, they'd end up going on to play the Lakers. So I think they're definitely going to need Russ for that series. With Russ gone in the beginning of the series, we'll probably see some more playing time going to guys like, Austin Rivers, maybe even Chris Clemens and Ben McLemore. Daniel House may be out for the first game. We'll see about that. But we'll probably see some more time going to some of the bench guards.
Moving on, today we have a very special guest for today's first ever JBA guest interview.
He has worked for Spectrum Sportsnet for 8 years as the host of the Los Angeles Lakers pregame, halftime, and postgame shows, alongside Hall of Famer James Worthy. Please give a warm welcome to Chris McGee, also known as Geeter. Thank you for coming today, Geeter.
What is up, BC and Jack? Am I the first guest ever on this show?
Yes, a very special occasion.
Man, I'm going to tell you guys something. From here on out, when I make a resume, and I have all my accolades on there, and I have Lakers, and I have the 1 Emmy that I've won, not the 9 that I've lost, I'm putting this on there. First ever guest for Jack and BC.
Thank you. That's very flattering.
I love it.
We just wrapped up a segment called The Hot Topic, where we cover the hottest stories in sports news. We would like to get your opinion on some of the topics we covered today.
Let's do it.
Okay, first and foremost, the race for the Western Conference 8th seed is now over. The Portland Trailblazers beat the Memphis Grizzlies yesterday to secure the last spot in the playoffs. Do you think the first-seeded Lakers match up well with the Blazers, or would they rather have seen the Grizzlies in the 8th seed?
I mean, Jack, to be honest with you, I think, fans or, deep down guys would have much rather seen Memphis just because they don't have any playoff experience and they're young and there's just no chance that they would be able to extend that series and make it tough on the Lakers. That being said, I think it's a good thing for the Lakers that they're facing Portland. You're facing a team who was in the Western Conference Finals last year, who has a superstar in Dame Lillard. And I think because the Lakers haven't played too many meaningful games since March 10th, this is what they need to get them going. So I think, deep down, sure, Memphis would have been easier, but I think the NBA is about getting tested and you got to beat the best. And for the Lakers, this is going to be such a fun series, taking on Portland. Listen, it's tough to match up with Dame. He's one of the toughest covers in the league. But the way I look at it, Portland is going to have a really hard time defending Anthony Davis and LeBron James as well. So I still feel the Lakers will be in the driver's seat. I'm picking them in 5 games.
Yeah, I think could prepare them for better teams later on.
For sure.
Next up, Russell Westbrook is expected to miss at least the beginning of the Rockets' first-round playoff series against the Thunder with a right quad strain. How do you think this affects the Rockets, and can they still make it out of the first round without him?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Brendan. It definitely affects them. If he was healthy 100%, the way Houston was playing, the fact that it's in an NBA bubble, the fact that you have James Harden and Russ on the team, I would pick Houston in a good 5 to 6 game series. Winning, but OKC making it tough. Now I think it's wide open. I think people underestimate OKC. I just have to give that team credit for what they've been able to do after losing first Kevin Durant and then Russell Westbrook. I mean, everyone thought this was a rebuilding year, but Chris Paul's had an MVP type season. He's going to be motivated. I'll say this. I think Houston advances, but I think it's really close, and one thing OKC will do is beat you up along the way. They're so physical, they're tough, and they're going to make you work for everything, so it's not going to be an easy series. And with Russ out, guys, depending on how much he misses, this could get dicey. If this goes 7, it's anybody's game, but I am picking Houston.
Yeah, I believe me and Jack each had the Rockets in 7 for the series.
Brendan, I'd love to see it, man. 7-game series are the best. You really get to see what guys are made of in 7th game.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and this is actually, your take on this actually changed my mind because I've always been big on the Rockets, and I thought even without Russ, this is still going to be an easy series for them, but I've really looked at the stats ever since I've talked about the Rockets, and I really think that the Thunder actually do have a chance. Like you said, I think it's still going to be the Rockets are still going to win, but I think the Thunder are really going to push the Rockets to their limit.
You know what's crazy, Jack, is that so many times in these series, it's about matchups, right? And like who kind of dictates the pace and style of play. The one thing Houston's got going for them is they just play a different style than everybody else, right? I mean, they go small, they get up and down the court, they shoot a ton of threes. So when they're playing well, it's really tough to match up with them. I think the interesting thing is going to be who kind of, I don't know, who dictates how those games are going. If it's Houston, then they win the series. But if the physicality in the game slows down, OKC can sneak up on them. They really can.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And moving on to our next question. We've seen the Lakers struggle a little bit throughout their time in the bubble. What do you think are their biggest weaknesses going into the playoffs? And do you think they can overcome these weaknesses? And if so, how?
Yeah, another great question. It's actually something I'm talking about on the show tonight as we do our playoff preview show. I think their weaknesses glaringly in those first 5 games was the outside shooting. They just didn't seem in sync. They were getting the shots they wanted, and they were just missing. And that's how the NBA goes, right? It comes around, it goes around, it usually evens out. The last 3 games, the Lakers, I think, made 12 threes, 14 threes, and 15, I want to say. So it came around to kind of what I expect them to look like. Here's the one thing, guys. When you ask me if I think they can, get over that and put it in the rearview mirror, yes. Here's what I think. It's really hard in sports to create a sense of urgency when you've already locked things up, whether it's the NFL, whether it's baseball, whether it's hoops. Once you get the seed you're at, you just really don't want to get hurt and you want to just be healthy going into the playoffs. So it was kind of hard. I felt the Lakers just they weren't as motivated as I would have liked to have seen. So for me, I'm not concerned. I think we're going to see a different team once the playoffs start. And you guys got to remember something. Like, the Lakers were starting THT. No offense, he's a great young player. He's a rookie. He's not playing in these playoffs most likely, right? So for me, the Lakers are going to shorten up the rotations. LeBron's going to be playing 38 minutes a night. He's going to have the ball in his hands most time. Anthony Davis is going to be playing 38 to 40 minutes a night. So I think the Lakers will be ready. So yeah, the one thing that probably concerns me, the shooting, but I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think also, honestly, if we had to pick an MVP of the restart for the Lakers, it'd probably be Kuzma. He's averaging 15.4 points a game on 44.4% shooting from 3, which is unbelievable, Sometimes people think that he hasn't really lived up to, his expectations of being like the third option for the Lakers. But I feel like, honestly, 15 points a game is pretty good. He's averaging just under 13 before this. So I think if he can keep this up going to next season, I think the Lakers, he'd be a very good piece for Lakers, be the third option going forward.
Yeah. Brendan, how old are you? 13? You're going to be 13 or 14?
I'm going to be 14 in a couple
You're going to be 14 in October, right?
November, yeah.
November, okay. Yeah, you're smarter than 90% of the people out there already. Exactly. You hit it on the head. There's so many unrealistic expectations put on Kyle Kuzma. People just expect him to be a third star like a guy scoring 25 a game. That's just not realistic. When you're on a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, guess what? You're going to play a lot less minutes probably and get a lot less shots. And when you play on a team with almost all veterans, there's a pecking order. And he had to learn his role. He had to learn how to fit in. He had to learn what was important. That's defending and just hitting a shot when you get your chance. And now he's thriving. And you see when he gets the opportunity, he puts up 18 to 20 a game. So I think Kuz is going to be awesome. I think he's fine. I think the expectations were a little high. People were expecting him to be the guy he was when he was a rookie, when the Lakers weren't a great team and he was shooting 23 times a game. So be patient. I think he's going to be awesome. And he's been a huge star. I think he's been the MVP. As well in the bubble. I'm with you on that one. The one guy I missed though, guys, is Avery Bradley. Tough, man. Tough to miss him, dude. He was big loss, guys.
Yeah.
We were talking about earlier how that would affect them, in terms of guarding Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
Avery Bradley's a great defensive player. Also, on the topic of, Kuzma, I think in Kuzma, you said he doesn't get a lot of shots and minutes playing with LeBron AD. It's all about being efficient. And LeBron said of Kuzma, he said, we can't win a championship if Kuz doesn't play well. So
I love that, by the way. And James Worthy loved it too. He said it on our show during the post game. And he's right. And that's a vote of confidence for a guy. So I think it was huge for Kuzma to hit that shot. And I think it was even bigger for LeBron to show that confidence in him and put that on him. I think that helps for sure. And I'm sure you guys earlier were talking about that perimeter defense. You hit on the head again. Like, man, people don't get credit for chasing around Dame Lillard and CP3 and James Harden and the Steph Currys of the world. And that's what Avery Bradley does. Lou Williams, Paul George. Like, Avery Bradley's an unsung hero, man. For 32 minutes a night, he guarded the best guy every single night. And that's not easy to do.
Yeah, he's a big hit for the defense, but, I still think the Lakers are really stacked team and have a lot of depth. And going back to Kuzma, just one last point on Kuzma. People, like you said, people put a lot of unrealistic expectations on him. I don't think his stats show how good he is as a player. His 2019, 2020 stats, he was averaging about 13 points per game, and that's still really solid. And you made the point on how it's unrealistic to say he's going to be like a third star, but he's still a really solid player. And I think he's only going to get better from here. And maybe when LeBron retires and he's still on the team, obviously he's just going to get better. He's going to keep putting up crazier stat lines. But his stats
you know what, Jack? We did a stat on our show. I don't know. It was earlier in the bubble. And when he started games, like so when AD was out or LeBron was out and Kuz got the start, his numbers went up like 7 points. I think he went, what did you say he was at 13? He went to like 20 a game. So like just looking at that stat alone, it's simple, right? It's like, oh, when he's in more and gets the opportunities, he's that guy. So I agree with you. There's going to be a day where Kuz becomes that, that strong number 2 type and he's right there, with AD when LeBron's ready to move on.
Yeah.
20 a game is very proficient numbers right there.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a phenomenal player. He's crazy skilled, but like his stats don't show how good he is because he's behind 2 of the best players in the league.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't say, oh, Kuzma's not putting up 25 to 30 points per game. He's a bust. He's not a good player.
Did you guys hear him the other night? He said in the postgame show, he's like, I'm playing against like one of the greatest players of all time, and Anthony Davis, who's a top player. Like, I'm playing behind. You guys realize that, right? Like, I'm not. I'd be starting on most teams,
Yeah. He definitely will.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm a big Kuzma fan. I'm excited to see where his career takes him. Moving into the next question, the Lakers added Dion Waiters and J.R. Smith to the roster before the start of the bubble seeding games. Do you think these two can be difference makers in the playoffs?
God, you guys are so much better than me at asking questions. Here's my answer to that, bud. I said this the other night on our show. I truly believe that Dion Waiters or J.R. Smith at some point in the playoffs, they're going to make a big difference. They're going to have a huge impact. I don't think it's going to be every game, but there will be a game. There will be a game where J.R. Smith gets called and he hits 3 threes and he comes up big. There's going to be a couple of games where Dion Waiters explodes for 12 points in a quarter and gets the Lakers back in the game, just like you saw him do a few nights ago. It's going to happen. So yes, to answer your question, I really, truly believe those guys are going to make an impact, and it's going to be an important one.
Makes sense.
Yeah, listen, I don't know if it's going to be every night, right? Like, I don't know how many minutes JR is going to get, but he's going to get a shot at some point. He's going to get a shot.
Yeah, I agree with you. And a lot of people kind of write off J.R. Smith because of some things that may have happened in the past. But, people forget to realize that J.R. was a really solid player back in the day, especially for New York. Like, a lot of people a lot of people clown on him because of that one moment in the finals where, I think we all know what happened there, but J.R. was a great player.
You bring up a great point, and yeah, he made a mistake in game 1 of that final, but he also won a championship. He also was in 4 straight finals, right, with those guys, and he was a huge part of that. And, we sometimes judge guys on their worst moments. JR's, I don't know what the stat is, but I want to say he's 12th or 13th all time in 3-pointers made. So he's more than capable of hitting a big shot.
Yeah, and he hasn't been a superstar in his career, but he was constantly putting up, or throughout his career, he was putting up around 12 to 18 points per game, like his whole career, which is pretty solid, which, like, obviously isn't superstar levels, but he was a big part of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he was really helping them out, especially with rebounding and assisting defense. So you can't really write J.R. Smith off as like, oh, he was that one guy that didn't realize how much time was on the clock. He's always been a solid part of his team. He's always been an important part in his team. So I think adding him on to the Lakers just gives more depth and a good veteran presence in the locker room.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
And J.R. Smith is currently 13th all time on the 3-point field goals made, NBA and ABA. So yeah, you got pretty spot on there.
Love it.
Yeah. Moving on to our next question. So what kind of rotation do you see the Lakers running in the playoffs? You see like an 8-man, 10-man, and who do you think will be in the starting five alongside AD and LeBron?
You know, I still think it's going to be, to start, I think it's going to be AD. I think it's going to be LeBron. I think it's going to be Danny Green. I think it's going to be JaVale. And I still think it's going to be KCP. Depending on a matchup, I think they have a lot of confidence in sliding Kuz in and going bigger. So that could be interesting to see down the road. It'll be interesting to see when they get Rondo back. It's hard, they have too many guys to make it an 8. I still see it 9 on some nights when they're really tightening things up and they're in one of those games where LeBron and AD are playing 40 minutes. There's going to be those playoff games. I think there will be also other games where you see a 10-man rotation. But I would bet on 9 most nights to be safe.
Yeah, they'll probably rotate guys in and out. They might have in 9-man rotation of one certain group of guys and swap out maybe like 2 of them for another 2 guys of the next game for another 9-man rotation, something like that,
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're always going to get Kuz. You're always going to get Caruso. You're always going to get Dwight, right? And then you're going to get a Dion Waiters type. But then there's going to be nights where you got to go to Quinn Cook. You need a bucket, or you got to go to maybe Rondo's healthy. Maybe you feel, JR. So those other guys, doesn't mean they're not going to play, but those will be the 9, I think, on those nights.
All right, now, before we let you go, we got to put you on the spot and ask, which 2 teams make the Western Conference Finals and which 2 teams make the Eastern Conference Finals? And who will prepare for the championship? And finally, who will be the 2020 NBA champion?
Lakers, Clippers, Western Conference Finals. It's destiny. I got Raptors, Bucks. I got Lakers beating the Clippers in 7 games. And then I have the Raptors actually finding a way to beat the Bucks. The Bucks again fail to get to the final. And I have the Lakers beating the Raptors in 6.
All right. So me and Jack did our NBA playoff predictions earlier. I had the exact same semifinals there. Jack had the Celtics in place of the Raptors. And then we both each had Bucks. Lakers final, Bucks in 7. So we'll see where it goes. We think it's very close between like 5-ish, maybe 6 if you count the Nuggets teams that could really make the championship.
Yeah, believe me, it's the Bucks year for sure. I thought that all the way up until March 11th, but I kind of want to pick against them. But I would not be surprised if it was the Bucks in the finals, without a doubt.
I think it'd be crazy if the Raptors were able to make the finals after losing Kawhi.
I know it's amazing the job Nick Nurse has done and what those guys have been able to do. I had to apologize to their fans on Twitter because I just feel like I underrated them. I mean, they are a tough team. They're not going to go out lightly. I think if that Bucks Raptors series happens, it could be an all-time series. 7-gamer could be awesome.
Yeah, I think it'd be a similar story to, the Nationals last year in baseball, where Bryce Harper left, and then the rest of the team just got a lot better and just ended up winning the entire World Series. So that might be a similar story with the Raptors there. Jack, do you have any thoughts?
Like you said, I think it'd be really interesting if the Raptors end up defeating the Bucks. And like you just said, I think that's if that series eventually happens, I think that's gonna be an instant classic. I honestly think it's gonna go to 7 games. Speaking of the championship, obviously I'm a huge Lakers fan, so
yeah, we don't have a choice, guys. We gotta go. Right, come on.
Brennan and I both said Bucks in 7, but it really could go either way. I think it just depends on how well the teams play together, and I think everyone thinks that that's going to be the championship, and if it is, that's going to be an instant classic as well.
Guys, I want to say I'm very honored to be your first guest. You guys did an incredible job. That was a lot of fun. Make sure you have me on later, all right?
All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
That was great.
We'll talk to you again soon. And
if the Lakers make the finals, I'm coming back on.
Definitely.
That's a deal.
All right. Let's go. Yeah. We'll do a little fantasy football talk too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye. See you later, Ben.
Let's move into the last segment of the episode today. There's going to be no question in the episode today, but what we do have in order to make up for that is a special prediction addiction is where we make predictions on almost anything, just anything that we feel passionate about and we want to predict. We'll predict it, whether it's like awards or like games, all that stuff. What we're going to be predicting today is the NBA playoffs. So, yeah, let's jump right into it. I'll share my predictions first. I'll start in the Eastern Conference. First up, I think the Bucks will beat the Magic in a clean sweep in 4 games. I think that the Raptors will beat the Nets in another clean sweep in 4 games. I think the Celtics will beat the 76ers in 5 games. I don't think the Sixers can make it competitive without Ben Simmons. And then I think the Pacers will beat the Heat in 7. I just think the Pacers with TJ Warren are just, they're just too hot right now to not win that series. And then I think the Bucks will beat the Pacers in 5 or 6. I think it depends on how TJ Warren plays. I think the Bucks could potentially stop him, but who knows? I think the Raptors will beat the Celtics in 7. I believe the Celtics make it competitive, but not enough to actually win the series. And I think the Bucks will beat the Raptors in 6 in the Eastern Conference. And then the Bucks will against the NBA Finals against the winner of the Western Conference. The Lakers, I think, will beat the Blazers in 6. I explained my decision earlier, 6 or 5 games. I think the Rockets will beat the Thunder in 7. I think they can maybe hold on early in the series and Russell Westbrook can come back and help them get it to 7. I think the Clippers will beat the Mavericks in 6. I think the Nuggets will beat the Jazz in 5. I think the Clippers beat the Nuggets in 7. Close series, they are 2 good teams. Clippers edged it out. I think the Lakers beat the Rockets in 6. And then I think the Lakers beat the Clippers in 7. The Battle of LA goes to the Lakers. And then in the NBA Finals, Bucks vs Lakers. Well, these are 2 teams that have been the 2 favorites almost all year long. 2 1 seeds facing off the NBA Finals. You got Giannis versus LeBron. I think that's the matchup I'm going to be talking about.
Okay, so mine is similar, but I do have my differences. Starting off the Eastern Conference, I have the Milwaukee Bucks beating the Orlando Magic in 4. I just don't think the Magic are competitive enough. Moving on, this is different than yours. I have the Heat beating the Pacers in 7. I think TJ Warren is playing really well right now, but, seeing the Heat versus Pacers game, TJ Warren was dismantled and Butler wasn't guarding him, but I still think that the Heat are going to beat the Pacers in 7, but Pacers can make it competitive. Then I have the Raptors in 4 versus the Nets, the Celtics in 5 versus the 76ers. Like you said, I don't think the 76ers can be competitive without Ben Simmons. Moving on to the second round, I have the Bucks in 6 versus the Heat. Actually, I'm gonna get Bucks in 5 versus the Heat. The Bucks are just too dominant, and I don't think the Heat are good enough to take it that far with the Bucks. So the Bucks move on to the conference finals. And I have the Boston Celtics in 7 versus the Toronto Raptors. I personally think if this is a second round matchup, it's gonna be a matchup to watch. I think it's gonna be a really entertaining matchup. But I personally think that the Celtics, who are, in my opinion, the underdog here, can probably dismantle the Raptors and be competitive enough to take it to 7 and probably steal it from the Raptors. I mean, I think that could be one of the biggest upsets of the playoffs. In the conference finals, I have Bucks versus Celtics, and I have the Milwaukee Bucks in 6. I don't think the Celtics are going to be able to take it to 7 games. I wouldn't be that surprised if they did, but I just think the Bucks are, like I said, too dominant. So that means the Milwaukee Bucks move on to the NBA Finals. Moving on to the Western Conference, the Lakers, the 1st seed versus the Trailblazers in the 8th seed. If I saw this before the bubble, I would obviously say, 4-0 Lakers, easy. But, seeing how well Damian Lillard's been playing and how well the team's been playing, I really think the Blazers can take it 6 games. I don't think they're going to be able to beat the Lakers, but, I think they can go that far and take it 6 games and make it competitive. I covered the Rockets in an earlier segment, and you said they could probably hold on for 7 games until Russell comes back, but I think they can really do it in 6. I think the Houston Rockets, even without Russell Westbrook, are a better team. Not by a lot, but I still think they're a better team. I think the Thunder need more time to work on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's game, which is probably going to be their star in the future. Next, I have Clippers versus Mavericks. I have the Clippers taking it in 7, so you may wonder why I have the Mavericks pushing it to 7 games. I really do have faith in the Mavericks. Luka Doncic is a triple-double machine. I really think he's an amazing player. I think he's gonna be the face of the league in a few years, and especially with Kristaps Porzingis, I really think they could take it to 7. I don't think they're gonna win against the Clippers, because the Clippers are a stacked team, but I think the Mavericks are a team you shouldn't sleep on. The Mavericks could shock the world there. And then I have the Nuggets versus the Utah Jazz. I have Denver in 5 games. I just think the chemistry with the Jazz has gone down ever since coronavirus. And I think the Denver Nuggets are a better team than the Jazz. Moving on to the second round, I have Lakers versus Rockets in 7. This is only if the Rockets have Russell Westbrook. When by that time I think they will. If they don't have him, I think it's going to be either in 4 or 5. Then I have the Clippers versus the Nuggets. I have the Clippers in 5. The Clippers is, in my opinion, a much better team than Denver. Then that makes it conference finals versus Lakers and Clippers battle for LA. I really think it's Lakers in 7. If they can play like they were before coronavirus and before the lockdown, I think they could take this from the Clippers. But if they keep playing the way they have in the bubble, which probably isn't at full power, I think the Clippers are going to be able to take this. But I have the Lakers in 7, which makes it the NBA Finals, and mine is the exact same as you. I have the Bucks in 7 games. I've thought about it, and on paper, I really think the Bucks are a better team. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. It's going to be a close matchup, but I have Bucks in 7.
So that is going to do it, guys, for today's episode of the JB All In Podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you enjoyed our first ever guest. Thank you for him for coming on. Remember to leave comments down below. Leave me a suggestion for what you do for prediction, top 10 countdown, topics we should cover. Maybe you agree or disagree with us. Tell us what you think down below about what we talked about today. Maybe you agree or disagree with our guest today. And always remember to show your support. If you enjoy, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, whatever. If you're on Podbean, follow, all that stuff. Share it with your friends if you think they'd enjoy it. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, see you guys. Thank you for watching.